Pivot in the backswing is massively important for controlling the path. Now, specifically the torso. So we're going to look at the relationship of how much you bend, forward bend, backward bend, flexion extension, how much you side bend, trail side, lead side, lateral flexion, and then how much you rotate. And then also we'll just take a look at your pelvic rotation, but then we'll look at the face to path, we'll look at your attack angle and your dynamic loft. And when we're trying to teach someone shot shaping, I'm a big proponent of, if you want to draw the ball, it is easier to influence the direction of the swing to the right in the backswing when the club's traveling slower with how you move. So extreme, and we'll kind of take these and then we'll change them up a little bit, use the smart tiles. The more you flex and rotate, the more you're influencing the direction to be more to the right. And inherently, Brian kind of does that. If you want to draw the ball, that's useful if you're a righty. Now, if you want to try and get the direction and the path more to the left, if you are more extended and a little bit more level here, you're going to find that the club is going to come out a little bit more outside in, which is going to make it easier for you to fade it. Now, obviously those are extremes, and golf is all about somewhere in the middle, trying to figure out for a player what's the feel that's going to be the catalyst for them to change. And the great thing about the smart tiles is we can then train from that. So, hey, that was really good, Brian. Oh, we need a little bit more of this. So we're going to look at then also what people do with their wrist angles a little bit at the top. Are you extended? Are you flexed? How's that going to influence what you're doing? Obviously, we wouldn't want to be at the top of the backswing with a really open club face. When we come down, now all of a sudden we've got the path to the right, but the face is excessively open and we get a big push slice. We don't want that. So we need to kind of work on those things too. So we're going to take kind of a draw path, fade path. He's a right-handed golfer. And how do we make that happen? So up here, we have a shot. What I want Brian to do is try and now, this is kind of a relatively sort of what we call neutral shot. Face to path's perfect, pretty good, pretty straight here. 2-to-1 relationship, that's perfect. So very nice. Attack angle kind of shallow, which is good. So what we're looking to see, and his dynamic loft's pretty good, that's a 6-iron. All we're trying to do now is to look at, he's rotated his torso 88 degrees. His pelvis rotation here, he's hit a few shots, so he's obviously warming up. Now he's got a bit more pelvic rotation, so he's turned away. His torso bend still flexed about 11 degrees, and he's got left side bend 34 degrees. So that's pretty good for a neutral shot. For a draw, we like that. Now we could just say, Brian, I love that. That's pretty good for you, that pattern. Let's smart tile it. So if we were to make that green, or make that his smart tile, that pattern now, and we set that, that would actually be pretty good for him to be in a draw setup, draw delivery. That's his chosen shot. So by default, he's a pro, should be pretty good. But let's just see how we can duplicate that. So again, let's just try that same feel. I actually like that for where you are for the draw. Got the right relationship here. Go ahead, let's see it. The ball there started just right. He got the path a little bit more to the right, but he still had the closed-faced path a little shallower. But again, he got the right relationship here in that pivot, pretty consistent. So from the power of a smart tile, that is what he's able to do. Now we could refine that. We could change the parameters on the club path, the club face. We could tighten that in. We could move his ball position up if we wanted to try and get the path less to the right. Those are some small nuances. But let's say I want to teach him to have a lot more rotation with his pivot on the downswing. I'm actually going to influence that in the backswing. So I'm going to get him a little more centered, feel a little bit more extended, not as much side bend. So as the club comes back on the downswing, it's going to be easier for him to get the club traveling more outside. Now think about this. You can see the camera down the line, and we'll get Brian to do it too, but the more I'm flexed as I rotate and turn, I create more depth. That's advantageous for drawing the ball. If I want the arms out, think of a fader, the more I'm extended and centered, there's less depth. Now the club's going to travel more across the plane, more outside, which is going to make it easier if I want to fade the ball. Again, it's much easier to put the club in a position in the backswing than it is the downswing. That's really important to us. So go ahead. Now we're going to get you a little bit more centered. So probably a little more neutral at address, torso a little squarer, but then I want you to pivot back. So let's turn back, way more centered feeling at the top, not as flexed. Okay, now we still want to get some pressure to that trail leg. We don't want to hang on the front foot. We want to feel like we're more centered. Now that should allow, as he starts down, that club to kick out a little bit more easily. Not an absolute, but it's going to influence it to make the ball easier to fade. Start it left of this noodle. Go ahead, set up. Get that stance a little more open too. Ball's up a fraction, and now he's going to make that nice centered pivot and then rotate through, and let's see what we see in the smart tiles. Okay, so the good news is Brian did what I asked him to do. So obviously relative to where he was, we've got some orange and we've got some red. So he lost his bend, so he wasn't as flexed at the top. Almost, you might call that reverse spining a little bit, but he is doing what I asked him. He also lost a little bit of the side bend and he rotated more. Pelvis didn't turn quite as much, but that allows him, when you look at the club path and the face relationship, he hit that one a little bit heavy, a little steep in the transition, obviously from that setup, because he's not familiar with it, but he got the path to the left, a little bit got the club face too close, there's a little bit of a pull hook, but it was perfect for sort of a pull fade or a fade, as some people might call it. But that sets up really nicely. So the ball flight data changed based on what he did with his setup. So if we want to train that, we could now make that with our smart tiles. We just set that as that's what we're trying to train. And then we work on that a little bit. So let's try one more of those. And then we're going to add in a little bit more piece on the wrists. We'll change some of the smart tiles up so you can see how we can add that relationship. So let's get a little more centered again. All right, and let's turn to the top and let's go. All right, so here we see again, he is now, relative to the range, he's definitely in the green. Didn't turn his torso quite as much there, but again, very much less flexed forwards. He's got the side bend and the rotation very good, and now we can see the club path. The face relationship is negative. He's a little steeper, as we could see on the attack angle there, but he's setting up for how he needs to get that fade delivery. Now, the one thing we can add here is we can change the tiles and say, okay, Brian, we're going to work a little bit at the top of the backswing on your lead wrist. And because you're rotating to the left, obviously we want to try and make sure we get the right face to path. The last couple of shots, Brian has had the face a little closer. He's a drawer, so he's used to getting that club face closing. So what we're going to do to give him some insurance is actually add some extension at the top of the backswing, intentionally, because then as he comes down, he's already going left with his body or rotating, which is creating some closing. If he's got this too flexed and he doesn't quite have enough other elements, he's going to hit a bit of a pull hook. So what we want to try and do is add some extension at the top of the backswing. So we're going to change the smart tiles up, and then we're going to work on extension of the lead wrist or cupping. So now, Brian, I want you to feel the same sensations, but the real focus here is as you get to the top, I want you to really feel like your lead wrist has a little bit extension and cup in the top of the backswing. That's excessive, but what's going to happen is he's rotating hard. As he comes down, the face is going to get a little more toe up, makes it easier to get open to the path, and he's already got the path going left, and we should get a nice cut coming back to the target. So we've got those variables changed up. We've got our wrist flexion at the top. Now we'll see how that influences the club face at impact in your cut shot. So when you're ready, let's just see a little practice for that to the top. So as you come up, a little bit more extension with the wrist. Beautiful. Toe down is going to feel at the top. There we go. All right, now let's rotate through. And let's hit one. Okay, so we've made a change here. So relative to where he was, we have the wrist reflection at the top is less flexed towards extended, and we got our nice club face at impact was much more open, and that was actually a cut. We got a shot that was fading there. So this motion here. Now we want to make that the baseline for him to train, so we're going to make that a smart tile. So Brian, let's see if you can do that same again. Maybe exaggerate that a little bit more. Really try and get that nice extended feel, beautiful, that very much toe down feel. So that halfway down in the downswing, the club's a little bit more toe up versus parallel to your spine. Beautiful. And then you're going to rotate through and be aggressive. So perfect. Here at the top of the backswing, again, we're within the range, which we like to see towards the extended position, and the club face at impact is square. Now, ideally, in a perfect world, it would be fractionally closed, so the ball would start left of the target, but there's a little heavy contact there, and it's on a mat. However, the ball is fading. We've got the path to the left. So now we've made that adjustment, and since we've focused on the smart tile being on extending the wrist more and staying in that range, every single shot has started left and has come back. So that's a way in the backswing for you to feel, okay, if I want to draw the ball, I'm going to be a little bit more flexed. I'm going to be rotated to create that depth, and I'm probably going to have my wrist angle maybe a little squarer so that I can get that face a little more close to the path in the transition. Alternatively, we saw here with Brian, he's a drawer, so we'll work on that fade. Remember, you've got to be able to move the ball both ways a lot of the time, get in trouble, I need to fade it. He's going to be a little bit less flexed, more extended. He's rotated a little bit, less side bend, and he's adding a little bit of that wrist extension or cupping so that as he starts down, he gets the benefit of the club face already being a little bit open. He's rotating hard to get the path to the left. He gets that open face to path and a nice cut. So that's a really easy way to use the smart tiles in the backswing to control your torso, pivot, and the wrist angles to be able to draw and fade the ball.